Short track racing is the lifeblood of NASCAR racing. All the way from the beginning, short track racing has been a piece of this sport, and it needs to be a piece of this sport into the future. With that being said, though, I don't think it's going out of line to criticize the way that short track racing in NASCAR in particular is today. Around the country, there seems to be a bit of a resurgence when it comes to particular short track series and tracks, but NASCAR seems to have started to fall behind in this. And I think that there are some glaring issues that both could be fixed soon and some that need to be addressed long term. Starting out, we're going to see the biggest visual reason I think short track racing is having an issue right now, and that, of course, is the next-gen car. It's no secret that the next-gen car has almost been a godsend for intermediate tracks. Tracks that were basically flyover races during the season in the Gen 6 COT and even Gen 4 era now are can't-miss television. Tracks like Kansas and Charlotte are some of the best on the circuit and have the best racing. Tracks like Michigan are having the best racing they've had in at least a decade and a half. But, unfortunately, on the flip side of this, some of NASCAR's biggest action tracks, the short tracks and road courses, in a bit lesser extent, have been majorly affected by this. For one, I think you got to look at the overarching issue. There's low horsepower in these cars, and they're completely redesigned and do not fit the way that short track racing is. The low horsepower gives a lack of throttle response, which is crucial, especially at short tracks like Martinsville, where you go from really fast to slow and back and forth. The throttle response just isn't there with these cars. Part of that is shifting. A lot of the drivers have talked about when they get into the corner, again looking at Martinsville, all they have to do is downshift if they get hit, then drive off the corner, and they're pretty much fine. Whereas in the older cars, you would get hit like that, have to get out of the gas, and then it was losing a position 2, maybe 3, getting freight trained. This isn't happening today. The big one is that it's been extremely hard to pass because of these things, even for short track standards. Listen, I love short tracks because it's hard to pass. I love Martinsville for that reason. I love Bristol, especially conveyor belt Bristol, for that reason. But when it is almost impossible to pass because now you have the aero disadvantage of this car as well, it gets to the point of absurdity, and that's something that just has to change. The next big point is location, and I gotta credit Slapshoes for talking about this in detail, so I'll link you to his video too. But at the moment, there are 4 short tracks that are used in the NASCAR Cup Series. 2 in Virginia, Martinsville and Richmond. 1 in Tennessee, which is right next to Virginia, Bristol Motor Speedway. And of course, 1 in North Carolina now, as we brought back the North Wilkesboro Speedway. And the thing is, a lot of these short tracks are all next to each other, and the Nashville Fairgrounds, if it's brought up to the Cup Series, well, that's just going to be more of the same problem. It's in Tennessee, so there'll be 2 Tennessee short tracks. There's nothing too much wrong with any of these tracks in particular, in my opinion. They all race differently. I like how they all race in different ways, and they all, at a time, had their fan bases that could support them. For years, Bristol and Richmond had sold out, and it was an amazing sellout streak, but NASCAR fans cannot support that anymore. The amount of NASCAR fans out there just is not there. The math doesn't exist with it that could perfectly fit this, and you're seeing that throughout. And other short tracks that could be brought up, well, they're going to have issues too, because some of them have areas that just cannot support NASCAR racing, whether that is Cup, Xfinity, Truck, or in a lot of cases even ARCA. So location is a big part of this as well. And speaking of location, the surrounding areas of these tracks too are something that hurts them. For current tracks, many of them are just out of the way from large amounts of people. It takes a big trek to get out there. And I'm speaking particularly about Bristol and Martinsville and North Wilkesboro. And the same thing can probably be said for numerous short tracks across the country. But those short tracks don't have to support a nationally touring series the way that NASCAR tracks do. And it's going to get more and more difficult as people become more and more closed off to be able to get them out of their bubbles to come out to yours. And that's just not gonna help this whatsoever. You have the Auto Club short track in an area that seems to want to just eat it alive and take the land for industrial use or just any use but a racetrack. And you have a lot of short tracks that are under attack from their local areas as well. My hometown track that I grew up less than a mile away from, the Rockford Speedway, is closing this year after over 70 years of being in existence so that the area can swallow it up and use it for business. This is a problem that is not unique to Rockford and is a problem that is only going to encroach more and more on NASCAR short tracks. And there's a lack of connection as well. Many diehards, like myself and probably many of you watching and listening, will agree that you love short track racing and it's one of your favorite parts of the years. It is for me, but the thing is, this does not reach out to larger audiences the way that other tracks do now. The racing in a lot of ways is seen as boring for some. It's seen with a lack of speed and lack of big wrecks, etc., stuff like that, whereas bigger and faster tracks seem to sell. This isn't necessarily something bad or wrong with short track racing, it's just more a marketing issue on that. There is a large amount of racing fans across the country that love short track racing, but that does not speak to those outside. And it's up to NASCAR to figure out a good way to market this so that people will watch. And that's the biggest result of all of this, and the biggest problem with short track racing now that all of this leads into. There's a lack of viewership. Some of the lowest, if not the lowest, watched NASCAR races of the year that are run on their scheduled days are short track races. And this isn't just one in particular, it's happened to all three of the mainstays of the last 25 years. You look at the Bristol Night Race last year, had 1.7 million viewers, was the lowest watched scheduled short track and just scheduled race of the NASCAR Cup Series season. Richmond from 2018 to 2021 was all between 1.7 and 1.8 million viewers, and while being on a Saturday night for all of those, it still was the least watched race of the season that was scheduled. And this isn't something that's new either. This has been the case for a long time. For instance, 2008, Martinsville, the second race at that track that year, had about 3.8 million viewers and was well below any scheduled race that was going on during the Cup Series season that year. This is something that's been going on for decades, and it puts into perspective why NASCAR wanted to move away from these tracks, not just because they could hold less people there, but because less people watched. I don't agree with that. I think it needs to be marketing, but this is something that needs to be addressed majorly. But with that, I'm going to pass it all over to you and ask, what are your favorite short tracks to watch, whether in NASCAR or outside? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support, and until next time, have a good one.